So let's talk everything Gilgo Beach.
Yes.
So,
yes.
You covered this a couple podcasts ago about Rex Heuermann, the man accused of the Gilgo Beach murders.
Yep.
There have been 11 bodies found. He is charged with 3 of them currently and is the main suspect for 1 other. He's a 59-year-old architect. Just quick rundown if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock and don't know what's going on. He's a 59-year-old architect who worked in Manhattan and commuted from Long Island. He's lived in Long Island in the same house literally his entire life, which is why it is the littlest, dump on the street, on the block.
Is it?
It's kind of a dump compared to the rest of the neighborhood.
What?
When you hear architect working in Manhattan, you think big, nice, beautiful house.
I wonder how much it costs, though, because didn't they have multiple properties?
They do, and the location is important, as it is anywhere, for property value. But he was married to a wife of 27 years with 2 kids, a family man. Nobody suspected him, yet nobody was shocked when they found out that it was him. Nobody was surprised, which we'll get into more later. But he was taken into custody on July 13th, and this is going on, 15 years after the first victim went missing.
Yeah, I know.
Which was Shannon, which he's not even charged with her murder, which is crazy. But he's charged with murder of the 3 victims, which are Melissa Barthélemy, 24, Megan Waterman, 22, Amber Costello, 27. And their bodies were found along the roadway of the beach in 2010. He's pleaded not guilty. I've heard people in the prison say that his lawyer apparently said he cried and said he didn't do it. But then the people in the prison are saying that he's stoic and comfortable in his cell, which is kind of interesting. They are searching his home. Well, actually, the search just concluded. And there were many items of interest, yet we don't know everything.
So I heard, and I saw a photo briefly when I was just listening to the news earlier, that they literally dug up the backyard.
Oh, they excavated the entire yard, had cadaver dogs out there, ground penetrating stuff they had the works.
Gosh. And they tore out, I guess he had a deck, or that's what they were saying on Newsweek or something like that.
Like a patio or something, yeah.
And they literally took the entire thing apart and brought a digger back there, Mm-hmm.
So they spent 12 days searching his house. The family got kicked to the curb, and they just returned. And get this, the family was in the front yard, the mom and the brother and the sister, and the mom's pacing back and forth while the kids are sitting on the front porch, and she's like, don't talk to me. She's mad at the cameras, and she even flips the bird at them, puts up her middle fingers at the cameras.
Dude, she's going through a lot,
I
though.
know.
Thank God she filed for divorce, and we already put an update video out on that. But imagine going through that. What she had imagined her whole life being was flipped upside down, okay?
I know.
Which I will argue all day long. Obviously, I didn't know him in person, but there's no way that they could have had, a 100% fulfilling relationship. You just can't with that kind of sociopath.
Yeah, and... so she filed for divorce. They won't make any statement or comment on it, her or her lawyer. But I will say the family does seem a little bit odd. And neighbors said the same thing, that they didn't think anything, but they were odd, and that Rex Heuermann would burn things in the backyard. And the police did say they found things in the backyard, but not any bodies. We don't know what
And-
it is yet. The only things that we know that they found were 279 weapons, handguns and rifles and
Oh
other
my
things,
gosh.
and a vault with a giant metal door in the basement. People were speculating that it was like a soundproof room. The police said, no, not really. It's a vault. So we don't know if it's soundproof or not, but it's a vault.
You know, taking a step back before going into the vault thing, you know what was interesting about him burning things in the backyard too is it's illegal in that area.
Oh, yeah.
So he was breaking the law, and you can only assume if someone's trying to like take a chance to break the law, it's got to be worth it, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Within city limits, it is normally illegal to burn trash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild, you guys.
So the police described his home as cluttered and like,
Really?
I saw videos and we'll put some pictures up of them taking things out of the home and stuff. And they say, like, I heard people saying it looks like a hoarder's house. Like it seemed very cluttered. And I did hear people speculating like it could have been a way with the vault and the clutter and stuff of him like compartmentalizing and like I don't know. I don't really understand that. But it is interesting that it was so cluttered.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that from a serial killer, to be honest, to live in like kind of a hoarder type environment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that can go into a serial killer's mind, though. And, you know, they always say that, like, a serial killer or sociopath, somebody who could do this, always has things in a very particular place in a very particular way. I think a lot of us, myself included, assume that means like very neat, and this is here, this has a home here, this has a home here. But I'm sure that it could be that way and be cluttered too. You know what I mean? Because I'm that same way where like I'll know where what I need is at in my clutter, but it is cluttered. Like if someone else tried to come in and figure it out, they'd be like, whoa, what is all this paper stacked on top of each other and stuff over here and stuff over there? But I could tell you where everything is, you know what I mean? So
Yep. I get that. So among the things found
boom,
okay,
boom, boom.
is a doll. And there's many speculations going around about this. So a big thing for everybody was, did you find any trophies? Like the media
Yeah.
kept asking the police questions when they were wrapping it up and did a little press conference kind of and made a statement. They're like, did you find any trophies? And that's what everyone's been asking online too. Like,
Sure.
we want to know about the trophies. They wouldn't disclose that. But the doll that they brought out, which we have pictures of them bringing it out, it resonated. People were like, oh, wait. There were dolls being left at the memorials for the victims.
Yes.
So
oh my gosh.
Here's some pictures of them. Here's Maureen. Okay, they look like cloth dolls. Maureen's doll, and it has the hands over the eyes.
What?
Yep. Here's
Dude.
Megan's doll, which is turned backwards with like its arms over its eyes, like it's leaning.
Is it over the eyes or ears? So it's
don't
like
know.
see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil?
I don't know. Here is Amber's, which has stuffing coming out of the doll's mouth, which I did hear people say that was interesting because of something to do with Amber's body and what happened to her, but I'm not quite sure what that is. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. This is my first time seeing these super creepy dolls.
So, what are these dolls? Apparently they're found at car shows, and they're called time-out dolls. And they're meant to look like toddlers in timeout. Okay, and they're like people who have like kind of an odd sense of humor use them. I don't understand that at all.
I
But
don't get it either.
They're at
like,
craft. They're at craft fairs too. Like people make these and look like there's this picture this woman posted, which I actually learn more about this because of her. Her channel name's True Crime Trivia. Like shout out to her. But these dolls are like at craft fairs and stuff, and people make them, and it's just so strange. They're meant to look like they're in timeout.
They're creepy.
It is creepy. But there's the doll that they
It's
took
almost
out.
like a weird submissive aspect to this doll, which is strange when it's like a toddler's size. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, everyone's saying this doll that was found in his house was kind of like a life-size doll, and it's got these long blonde braids. It's dressed in like this fancy dress. It's got like a red bow on its head. There was someone she said, True Crime Trivia said something about people were speculating it was an Icelandic doll, and apparently his wife is from Iceland or is Icelandic.
Okay.
Which it doesn't look like the timeout dolls. This actually looks like a much more high-end, like, intricate doll, to be honest. So, I'm not sure there. But it is weird. I think the dolls at the memorials is weird. If there's any connection between the one found in his home or the ones found at the, memorials, I don't know if there's a connection there. Maybe it's just people connecting dots that don't connect. But the dolls at the memorials is super weird. And I do feel like he did it. Because you're kind of right. There's one covering the eyes. Then there's one turned around, and its ears would be covered, but it's not really. Covered. Yeah, but I think it's meant to look like it's going like this.
Okay. I was thinking, hear no evil, or see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil.
And then the stuffing out of the mouth. Like, they're each in a different position with different things going on, and I wonder if that's relevant to their murders, and I'm really curious if he put them there. Like, I kind of think he did.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just too creepy. And they're too creepy because, like, these victims didn't know each other. We already know that they didn't have any association with each other.
They were just all prostitutes.
Right. So, like, it would be one thing if one of them got a doll. Then you could think, okay, well, maybe it's a family member, and that family member has a memory of them carrying a doll when they're younger. Or maybe they were interested in dolls when they were younger. But we have 3 separate victims, all with a doll left there.
And they're meant to look like toddlers in timeout. And they're meant to be a humorous thing.
Strange, yeah.
Yeah, that's not really something typical you would leave at a memorial.
Mm-mm.
It's extremely out of the ordinary. And that's a really strange sense of humor to put it on a dead person's memorial who was killed by a serial killer. Like, that's kind of sick.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it makes me wonder, right? Because we've talked about, like, the psychological aspects of a serial killer and what that means, what that does, and how they look at the rest of the world and society and culture and things like that. I think that there is a very big connection, a very big line to draw between how a person uses a doll versus how a serial killer uses a victim, right? I can almost guarantee you that most of them look at their victims in the same way. They don't see them as equal. They see them as something lesser than human, which is why most serial killers have a type. For Rex Heuermann, based off all the evidence we're seeing, he looked at adult workers as less than human to the point where on almost a daily basis, definitely on a weekly basis, he was going out of his way to harass, scare, and verbally torture adult workers.
Yep.
You know?
Even to the day of his arrest.
I know.
And not only that, their families.
It is scary stuff.
It is super scary.
And
he was a very sick and twisted individual.
And the way they were tied and restricted and a bag put over them, or whatever it's called, that type of bag.
Burlap sack.
Yeah. The camo burlap sack was put over them. I think that we can draw a correlation between looking at them as a doll, which, by the way, he has a doll in his house, and him, looking at them like dolls in the same way that someone would use or play with a doll.
So, you know the child that was found at the beach?
Yep.
I don't know if you mentioned this last time or if you even knew it, but one of the women found out there is confirmed by DNA the mother of that child.
One of the women tied to him?
One of the women found on that beach, she has not been tied to him. She's unidentified. We don't know who she is, and we don't know who the toddler is, but it is her child confirmed by DNA.
No way. With different times ended?
I don't know.
Different ending dates?
Not necessarily.
We're going to have to look into that and see.
I know.
Wow, because, you know, Heuermann antagonized and harassed the families too, like you were saying, but, you know, maybe in a situation like that, the way he would look at ending them would be different. They wouldn't be one of his dolls, these very particular type of woman that he had. It was like some sort of an extension, you know, ending.
Well, maybe, but he did look up CP. Like,
I know.
Of kids being harmed. Like,
I know,
you know, not just like, assaulted, like in like the regular way, if you can even say that, but like violent. Extremely violent.
Yeah.
So.
And he was very, very specific in the things he was looking for. I know we mentioned it, one of them, like, you know, he had searches for a very specific age of a child, a specific race of a child, a very specific thing being done to a child, which already makes me super creeped out, because when I hear that, like, that is a very specific search and makes me feel like he knows there's that kind of video out there somewhere. But then how would he know that video is out there? Is that him making that video? Or has he, in his years of being free and not getting caught, has he created associations with other people that are involved in that?
I've wondered about that too. That's a very good point, because, you know, usually with people who are assaulters of children, they form these communities, like these rings, so that they can get access to as much material as they can. It's just terrible.
It is. It's awful. It's awful. It makes me think maybe some of those bodies were another serialist.
Yeah. If you have any information to add on to this, for sure let us know. But I wanted to next talk about the interview of the ex-escort Nikki Brass.
So I have one other thing to add that I didn't do any research on. So if you guys know anything about it, and I'm assuming since you didn't bring it up, you didn't know anything about it, but did you hear about the portrait?
Oh, with
of
the bruised
woman
face.
With the bruised face?
The woman with the bruised face, yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, the cops took it. They want to find out if it's any person in particular, or if it's just an art piece.
Of a woman with a bruised face.
That's really strange, but people make really strange art. Like, look at that Balenciaga Karen Group thing with the, you know, the sculptures of kids with things on their face. You know, male organs on their face. And
look, if I saw a portrait of a woman with a bruised face in, you know, the home of, like, someone that's a feminist pushing for female rights, things like that makes sense. In a woman's household, like, that makes sense, getting over struggle, like, I can see the correlation there. But we have it that was in a serial ender's house, so
of women.
That could also make sense with his interest in harming women.
I wonder if he painted it himself, or if he bought it, or if
so strange.
Is it a literal picture, or is, like, I'm curious.
His ex-wife needs to write a book. If you somehow hear this, you need to write a book. We need to know all those little nitty-gritty details that she's unfortunately going to be looking back on and being like, oh my gosh, that makes sense now. Oh, even small things like if they're out in public, you know, maybe you noticed one time him have a really long stare at a certain woman. Like, those things are going to start connecting.
Yeah, they will. I've heard people speculating and wondering if she had any idea, because her hair was found on a victim. And I want to be careful there. I don't want to, like, speculate. She's going through a lot, and I don't think she knew. But I'm not going to deny there could be a possibility, because there was a very specific...
her hair was found on a victim?
Yes, her hair was found on a victim. So it could be just from his clothes, because he lives with her. Like, my hair is everywhere in my house. There's literally clumps of hair when I sweep or vacuum that I find in corners and stuff, because when you're a woman with hair, like, you shed a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not to be, like, it's not totally unheard of or impossible. Like, it can happen.
Yeah. I get it.
And they do their laundry together. They're a family. So I have heard people speculate about that, and also the very unique description given back in the day of his car, a big giant guy. Like, the description was very specific, and people are like, she didn't see that? Like, these murders were huge in Long Island. She didn't see that and wonder? So I want to be sensitive there.
I do too.
And a lot of people, will see a red flag and ignore it because this is your husband of many years and you want to trust him, and you can't just go accusing your husband of being a serial killer. Like, it's not that easy in real life to be like, hey, I saw that and I think you're the serial killer.
Exactly. And it's not even that you want to trust him. You do trust him. And we talked about this on the last video where, I think serial enders get a husband, a wife, whatever, and that is their cover in society, and that's not who they truly are. That's who they have to be so that they can truly be who they are at night in the dark when they're doing their dirt and stuff. And I think they're very careful to make sure that relationship lasts. They put enough into it to make everyone feel comfortable, it seem legit, and then that gives them the ability to go do their own stuff. I totally think that not seeing those things can happen very easily. Very, very easily, because she trusts him. She would see it and be like, oh, that's odd. That's kind of scary. That's like our vehicle, and not even think about it actually being him.
Yeah, because, like, especially in, like, and it's, Long Island is like a little community kind of, but it's like near New York. People come in and out of there all the time. Like, who's to say it's your husband's car?
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think she, like, knew. She could have, like, had a suspicion here or there and just been like, no, it's him. Like, no way. So, you know, that would be very hard to believe about your husband of 27 years.
And like you said, imagine bringing that up. How? When? Like, that would be insane.
I know. It's hard enough to accuse somebody of, like, cheating, or something else. But I forgot, before we get into into Nikki Brass's interview, which is pretty shocking if it's 100% true, which I'm not saying I don't believe her, it's just we don't, like, have proof necessarily. And she did do the interview before speaking with police. So,
priorities.
yeah.
Gosh.
I know, I agree. But they have extended the search to Nevada and South Carolina. So after he was arrested, like, in Las Vegas, the police were like, oh, like, we should see, because he owns property here. And apparently his property is in the Spring Valley area, a timeshare at the club. Wait, what is that? Do you know how to pronounce that?
What?
You might know.
Where?
Right here.
Club de Soleil?
Okay. Condominium complex. So it's a condo. Mm-hmm. So, like, at least there's no property. It's just like a condo.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope, but some condos do have a yard, actually.
Yeah, and they didn't find any bodily remains or anything like that in his New York home. So I'm nervous that he just has property there. Yeah,
I am too. And also, they've extended it to Chester, South Carolina, and apparently there's what is it called? Atlantic Beach?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yep.
Is that actually it? I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
Atlantic City?
Atlantic City, yes. That there's some disappearances there they're looking into. I saw a couple women that they brought up.
Dude, those are mob centrals. That is like the definition of 86 is where it came from. That's where in Vegas, when you 86 someone, all the mobs owned the city, they drive them 8 miles out from the strip and put them 6 feet under. Like, that's where it came from,
Yeah.
you know? And the mob that owned Las Vegas also was part owners in Atlantic City.
Yep. So they're looking there. There is nothing on that yet. We don't know anything yet about that, but we'll find out. I think it's very possible. I mean, it seems very convenient. His other properties are in Vegas and South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Like, very convenient.
Mm-hmm. I know.
There's a reason for that, clearly. So I think it's very possible that he might be connected to murders in those states eventually.
Yeah, when you look at the timing of how he ended these women, I just don't think that it's only these 4. There's no way that urge, that drive, it's like, it's something that can't be controlled for most of the people like him.
Yep. And did you know that even though they used his DNA from that piece of pizza and connected him to these women, that his DNA didn't go in a database because he's not convicted of the crimes? That was asked at a press conference, and the police said, well, actually, it's kind of complicated. Like, their DNA doesn't just go straight into a database when they're arrested. Like, there's a lot of, legal stuff that has to happen for that to happen.
I get it.
And I was like, what? I thought if you just get arrested, like, your fingerprints go on file. If you're accused of something this heinous, your DNA goes into the system.
Because arrested doesn't make you guilty of a crime, therefore you're not state's property or the Fed's property.
I thought that was interesting.
Wild, huh?
Yep. But anyway, I just want to mention her interview, which I do want to watch it on live stream with you because I want you to see it, the long version of it, because there's some short ones going around. But she went on CNN and she went on a podcast, and the first one I saw, which I think is the very first one she did, was this podcast, which I will find it and post it here because I can't remember the name. But she met him online. She was hard up for money. She had issues with addiction back then. This was before she had kids. And she said she was real small back then, like 120 pounds,
Yep.
like petite, like the victims. And she agreed to meet him at a restaurant because she actually had some safety checks. She showed her sister his picture, not a name because they were using fake names online, and said, this is where I'm going, this restaurant, just to be safe.
Work, I'm telling you.
So, and she would only meet with him to have dinner before doing anything else. Like, she wouldn't go anywhere. So she wanted to meet in a public place. She meets him. She said he was giant, and she said his size was intimidating, and he used it in an intimidating way.
Really? Wow.
She said when she shook his hand, she's like, nobody should have that hard of a handshake. She said it's aggressive.
That's funny because that's like the 3rd time I've heard that about him.
Yep. People at his work say that too.
Yeah.
She met him at the restaurant, and she said he seemed like a normal dude once they sat down and they were talking, and then he was like, hey, are you into true crime? And she was like, yeah, actually, I really like true crime. And he's like, did you hear about the Gilgo Beach murders?
No way.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, actually. And they get into it and talking about it. And she said he's like, it really like set off alarm bells how just into it he was. Like, he was almost like it was this fantasy, like he was reliving it, she said. And he got very specific and said, how do you think they didn't get caught, like, or they didn't find the bodies, and stuff? And she's like, well, I don't know, because I don't know the entry points, like, to the beach and stuff. Like, I don't understand. I don't know that much about that part. And he's like, well, he said, wouldn't it make sense to put them in a burlap sack and, like, go trekking through the marshes and dump them there, then like they would decompose quick. Like he started going into details and stuff. Like it would be hard to find them.
You guys, oh
and
my gosh.
She got nervous.
Yeah.
And she was freaked out, and they had he was really pushy and wanting her to go back with him, and he told her he lives near the beach, the Gilgo Beach.
My gosh.
And she was like, no.
Good.
And he wanted her to leave her car there in the city. And she was like, and he would not accept her bringing her car. And she was just like, nope. And she's like, it was like one of those situations where you go like tell the bartender a code word so that they know you're in trouble. And she got out of there and survived. And now she's like completely turned her life around. And she's a stylist and doesn't have a drug problem anymore, has kids. And she said something I thought was really important, is that she had the chance to do that, and none of these women did. Like, none of these women had the chance to turn their life around. All of them were hard up for money and resorted to prostitution, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No. I'm an advocate for adult work. I
totally believe sex work should be legal.
Yep.
I don't think women should have to turn to the streets and be unsafe like this.
I agree.
Serial killers should not have the chance to hurt women like this.
They need to have safety too, though. I feel like in these situations, a lot of these women could have been saved if you just make it look like you were dropped off there by somebody, or let the person you're with know that, you know, somebody's waiting up for you. Like, there's a lot of different things you can do.
Like safety checks, like calling a friend and being like, hey, I am here with this guy. Just letting you know I'm here, and I will call you when I leave. If I don't call you in an hour, check on me.
That's probably the best one, honestly.
In front of them. So that they know somebody is looking out for you and is going to call the police if you don't turn up within this amount of time. Yep. And they know exactly where you are.
Exactly.
That will deter them 100%.
That would stop anything, anytime.
And meet them in public like she did first. Yep. Like, no, we have to go to dinner first.
Yep.
That's how you do it. So, you know,
that's interesting.
It is interesting, and I would like to watch the full thing. I didn't get to see the entire thing, but I saw the meat of it, and there's been a lot of people from his childhood, neighbors, people trying to sell stuff from his childhood, which is kind of crazy. Who the heck wants to own? It's called murderabilia. Murderabilia is what they're calling it. Like, who wants to own something from this creep? Are you kidding me? Like, I love, like, talking about and discussing true crime and serial killers and contemplating it. But I don't love the serial killers, and I sure as hell don't want their creepy stuff. Like, bad energy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there's many people that just said he was a recluse, he was quiet, but he was scary at the same time.
Well, he's huge, man.
He was big. Apparently he was weird, but they didn't think it would lead to this, but at the same time they weren't shocked by it. He apparently was everybody's punching bag until high school, when he, like, jumped up, had a growth spurt.
Well, and one thing I want to point out too, if you guys haven't watched that interview with the guy from that like the housing industry or whatever in New York that did an interview with him, I felt like it was awkward the whole time. I watched a professional body language expert watch it, and he wasn't pointing out the things that I saw. And you guys, I'm in high-intensity sales and have been forever, and I depend on reading people's body language. And I could tell watching that Rex Heuermann interview that Rex Heuermann was staged the entire time. The way I could tell was how far his elbows were from his body. Like, when someone's comfortable, you just let loose. You don't have your arms all tense. Your elbows are normally leaned up against your body. He was a bigger guy in the middle, so like they definitely would have leaned up against his body, but he sat real up and in composure and straight, and this super awkward position, which like like flanked him out, you know, to where he appeared bigger, and the way he was moving his hands was really unnatural in the way that I could tell, like, that's what somebody does that's practiced in front of a mirror, you know? It is not natural. And the expert wasn't pointing that out, but I 100% felt like that. Go watch it again, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Even his neck movements. And the reason why I felt like in that interview, there were 2 different spots where he was reliving those endings a couple times, because you could see his genuine facial expressions come out, and he fights them back. So it's when he's talking about being a hammer, and it's when he is talking about something to do with the beach. So I watched the behavior panel watch that, and it's a group of 4 body language experts, and they all give their take on each clip. And they talked about his hand movements, saying, no way.
Yeah,
good.
That they were like aggressive, I think is the word that
they're practiced.
Yeah, and they could tell he had practiced, like,
good
speaking to people, and because that's what he does. Like, he's an architect that has his own staff, which apparently isn't normal because they normally outsource, and he basically teaches the city their own codes. And that's one thing they pointed out, is that in every every time he puts other people down to put himself above everyone else. And that was that was big for me. I was like, yeah, he totally does. Every chance he gets, he acts like everyone is stupid, and he's got to be the educator. He's got to be the one to tell them. And
which, again, a doll.
Yeah.
You're forming this person. You're getting them to do what you want them to do.
If you haven't seen the behavior panel, you should watch their show.
I haven't seen it.
It's pretty good. I don't always see what they're seeing, but I do think the combined of all of their opinions, I think that was a really smart idea to get all 4 of these people. And the British guy is my favorite with the longer hair.
I feel like my body language reading is really, really good, but I'm my own judge, so I could just have a big head and really suck at it. But I feel like I usually get stuff pretty spot on most of the time. So.
Yeah, and you're coming from a more experienced,
self-taught, experience lived.
So you're going to describe it in the way you're going to describe it's going to be a little different than someone who has studied it in school. But you could be picking up on similar things. But that's pretty much it for the updates. I mean, the town might buy his house. That's another thing, is the city might
tear it down so they don't get people obsessively coming there.
They have to patrol.
Crime.
They have to patrol it constantly right now, because tons of people are going there and selfie with the serial killer's house.
Yeah. Dude, if I was there, I would. Just saying.
I don't know if I would be out there laughing, be like, ha, selfie. No, I think I would probably take a picture or a video for content.
I don't know if it would be
but I wouldn't do a selfie.
I don't think it's
honest.
about comedy. It's an eerie feeling knowing that a man so evil, he could do this to these women in this way, and this is only the few we know about, and he lived there for so many years, multiple decades. You want to be able to take in those feelings and sensations, There's a lot of people out there who have this sixth sense where they feel energies and those things around them, and why I would want to be in those spots, you know what I mean? Is to see the sense of feeling that I get from that area, Does it feel bad? Does it feel negative? Does it...
Yeah, so one more thing to mention
stuff.
is that was his childhood home, so a lot of people were speculating that it was kind of a dump and a cluttered mess because he was holding on to his childhood. He wanted to keep it exactly the way his father did, because he was following in his father's footsteps to an extent. His father was an engineer. What was he?
Yeah, he worked on the space station or space shuttle or whatever.
But he also
NASA engineer.
built furniture in his free time, and it seems like his father was a figure in his life, and it almost makes me wonder
if his dad was a serial killer.
Yes.
Yep. I thought the same
and
thing.
that's why he looks up to him so much and wants to keep the house exactly the way his dad kept it.
I agree, and that's super interesting for you guys out there watching. It's been proven that DNA holds so much more than we even realize, to the point where it carries over trauma, okay? So, like, if you had really bad, horrible trauma which has affected you negatively your whole life, and then you have a child, there's a very good chance that that child could be susceptible to those same kinds of feelings more so than somebody who doesn't have that. You know what I mean? Like these little remnants of the trauma and whatnot. Now, sociopathy, ADHD, all these other things that we deal with, seeing serial killers and other things, those are being looked into as being transferred too. ADHD. So it's very possible that I'm just saying what I know. I have ADHD, okay? So
yeah,
I
but
know
you said
that
things
ADHD,
we see in serial killers.
well, yeah. ADHD myself and serial killers, sociopathy, but they're figuring out that all that travels from in your genetics and DNA, you know, and it might not be at a 10. So like if I'm a sociopath and I'm like the most extreme form and it gets passed down to a child of mine, they could be anywhere on that scale, but they're way more likely to be a part of that scale. So
interesting.
It is.
That concludes like the updates into, you know, Rex Heuermann and the Gilgo Beach murders. I really hope that he gets charged with more, to be honest, and we find out what happened to a lot of these. There's still so many people we don't know what happened to them.
Yep.
So
rightfully charged.
Yep.
I hope it gets to a point where he realizes, like, look, I'm never getting out, so my wife left me, my kids probably won't talk to me anymore, and I might as well just come out, because serial killers unfortunately want the glory of what they did to those people. However, like, I think police and everyone should stroke their ego to make them want that glory more so that we can get closure for victims, okay? Let them feel like they're glorious. Who cares? They're going to be in jail forever and multiple lifetimes. So, you know what I mean? At least we can get closure for victims and find out what happened and things like that. So
I agree. But let us know what you think, if you have anything to add, because it's a lot. There's a lot floating around out there about this.
The amount of evidence in this is insane. It is mountains.
It just makes
mountains of proof.
It makes you like wonder how it didn't get solved earlier. But then you hear about the police corruption, and you're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
that's why.
Someone commented saying something along the lines of the police were in on it. That's why. And I don't think
a lot of people
possible,
believed that because the police chief at the time was involved with prostitutes and was extremely corrupt and is now in prison for it, that he could have been connected in some way. But I don't think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Having an issue with wanting to hook up with women, or
he just cared about
prostitutes.
himself more than he did the women.
Yep. Well, he cared more about himself than the safety of his public, because he was the one, too, that kept the FBI away from giving their assistance and figuring out who did this. We probably would have found out a long time ago, 10 years ago, if he wasn't so afraid of the FBI coming after him, which they did anyways, so it was pointless.
Yep.
All you did is put your public at risk, so.
I know. It's so horrible.